Hello, and welcome to this next session entitled JSONPath and Custom Columns for the CKA exam. So, what we're going to look at today is two common areas that seem to appear quite frequently in the exam itself, and that is JSONPath and custom columns. Now, there are two different types of methodologies that you can basically retrieve and format um, information from the actual returned API server. So as we may or may not be aware, when you basically make a call to a Kubernetes object, kubectl get pod, for example, that object basically returns back API information, but it's actually hidden to you, so you don't actually get to see it. Now we're going to prove that in the sense where if I go over to my Kubernetes cluster here, and you can sort of see that right now I basically don't have any pods running in my default namespace. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my GitHub series here. I'm going to go into series 2, and I'm going to go into this 2.4 JSONPath and custom columns, which is what we're going to basically look at today. So what I've done here is I've just stood up a Kubernetes cluster that's already running. So that's what you would have seen previously. Second of all, I'm going to create a fake deployment. So we know that right now I do not have any information or pods running in my cluster so far for Kubernetes engine. So I already have this fake deployment file here. So all I basically have to do is I have to just run that and execute that, so that it will actually create my fake deployment. So I'm just going to come out of that, and I'm going to create my fake deployment. And you basically should see that your deployment and service has been now created. Now, if I go back in and I rerun my get pods command here, you can basically sort of see that right now I actually have 4 pods that are actually running. And when I actually ran that command here, that kubectl, there was a lot of information that was actually returned to me that was hidden from view. So what I can actually do here is I can sort of say get pods dash o JSON. And you can see right now, I see a huge amount and a lot more information that's basically kind of come through now. So you can sort of see from my simple command of JSON, adding JSON and getting the pods in JSON format, I can see a lot of information that's actually available to me now. So if I kind of go back to my notes here, and question 1 really kind of starts about, how to list pods in different ways. So you can basically sort of say how to get them in all namespaces, how to sort them by creation date, how to get them with no headers, but also kind of sort by method name. So I can kind of just come down here to the end of the file here, and I can just clear that, and I can just run. Sorry, I need to just create my alias because I've just created a new terminal, and I'm going to run that. And you can basically sort of see that this is actually sorted by method name. So this is in alphabetical order now. Okay, so there's simple kind of basic commands that you can basically run to sort ascending or sort descending, but you can also kind of get your pod verbose level debugging here. So I can sort of say, if imagine I basically had some issue with this Nginx pod, and right now I don't actually have an Nginx pod, but imagine I actually had an Nginx pod, and I could sort of see, okay, basically, other information will basically come back regarding that pod. So what I'm going to do is I can just change that to be a real pod here, and I can do v6, and I can basically sort of see, so in verbose logging 6, I can sort of see that it's running. Now I don't see a huge amount of information, but what if I actually increase that to be 8? You see, I get an awful lot more actual information regarding, response status, response headers, the accept, the request headers, the get, the actual API call that was actually made. So, you can see an awful lot of actually better information about the actual pod. So that can kind of help with your debugging of actual pods as well. So if I bring it back down to 7 again, I see less information again. So what I'd like to do is when you're going to go on to question 2, you can sort of see how to actually create pods, with temporary inputs. They're basically, the same type of scenarios that you'll basically have to do when you go to your Kubernetes. When you go to your Kubernetes.io and you go to your documentation here and you go to your cheat sheet in here, you can sort of see that this is the kubectl cheat sheet, and you'll basically sort of see, how you could basically create like a temporary pod in here, using this type of scenario here, echo out hello world. So really what I want to do is I want to come down to question 3, and I want to look at this JSONPath. So, JSONPath basically has a specific syntax that you basically must follow if you want to get information regarding your cluster. So if I take, for example, this command here, and if I was kind of go into my terminal and just make sure that it's kind of cleared, but if I was to basically run that, you can sort of see I'm saying k, which is my alias, get pods, output into JSONPath, but get the actual range of pods. So get the full range of items, and for those range of items in my pods, get the actual meta name and get the meta namespace. Okay, so I can actually sort of see that right now I've used JSONPath to basically pull out and extract the method.name and the method.namespace from each of those pods. Now, how do I actually confirm that that is actually true? Well, if you kind of go back to where we kind of looked and sort of said, well, I can actually describe one of my pods here, and I can kind of see the output here for JSON. You can sort of see that, this matches up to, when I've output my pod here, you can sort of see it matches up to my namespace here, which is label, and my name, which is here. So really, it's kind of like a tree type hierarchy that basically you can sort of see at the root. You basically have the metadata, and then you basically have the name, and then you have the namespace. And that's why I just have to do dot metadata and dot name, and then dot metadata dot namespace. Now, if I actually wanted to sort of look, for other items, I could sort of see like maybe the status IP. So we can sort of see that the actual status IP. So if we kind of come down, let's see where our status IP is. We kind of come down, and we can see here's a statuses, and here's a status. So this is our status. We're in our status block, and then we're going to come down, and you can sort of see that the pod IP is actually listed here. So I want to extract that out, and I just want to be able to sort of see that IP for each of these pods. So what I can basically do is I can go back into my command here. I can take my command here, and I can kind of run that. And now I basically have, my pod name, and I actually have the IP that all of these pods are running on. Now, it's not overly, formatted, really, really nicely, I'd sort of say. But, from the type of exam question, it may be that you basically have to extract some information using JSONPath and then kind of output it to a file. So, I could do the same thing here, and I could actually just, run the same command, and you won't basically see the output this time, but you basically sort of see that I'm using like a test file. And then, if I cat my test file here, you can sort of see that I actually have the extracted information. So that's really about kind of JSONPath, and JSONPath, it's its own terminology and technology in itself. So, I would certainly kind of, highly recommend that you follow some JSONPath type of learning, official learning for the exam. If you just took an hour or two course to actually understand what JSONPath is. But really for the exam wise, that would be the type of kind of question that you may kind of find on the exam, something to do around understanding how the actual tree type architecture works and the layout works, so that you can basically extract the information out. And some of the queries could kind of get more complicated, but I think it would kind of be enough that you would actually understand how they would work. Because if you look at the actual cheat sheet here, you'll also sort of see, if you kind of search for JSONPath, so JSONPath, you can sort of see here, it's basically getting the pods with that actual selecting that's outputting the JSON path. So for all items, get the metadata labels that version field, and that's exactly what you're outputting here. And here's a different type of um, example, and here's an example where you actually extract out the external IP. So where the type is external IP out of the addresses array here. So you're again kind of linking over or looping over all of the actual commands, all of the nodes here, and then you're basically kind of extracting out, looking for in the addresses field, you're looking for the type is equal to external. So that's really kind of about JSONPath, and then kind of going down to question 4 here, where we basically have custom columns. So this is another type of kind of extraction where you're typically doing the same type of extraction. You're basically trying to get information out from specific ports. But what can actually happen here is with the custom columns, you can basically you can name your own column here. Plus you can sort of say, comma, and then have a second column here as you basically require. So, let's sort of see if this one would return me anything. So I'm going to just kind of clear that for a second, and you can sort of see that, this time, with using the custom columns, I have a pod name, I can sort of see, yes, I have a pod name here, and I have a pod status, and I can see a pod status. And basically, this is information regarding that array here that basically has information here. So this mapping here basically has like, the running status, and it actually has when it was actually started at. And then you can do more kind of complicated queries on that, but generally, it's going to be the same for services, for PVCs. It's going to be, the same type of scenario when you basically have multiple ports, except that in that kind of case, you may have to provide a star so that you basically get all of the actual IPs. You can sort of see here, get service custom columns with the service so the meta name is kind of, the first thing that you're going to extract, the first field. And the second field that you're going to extract here is the annotations of the main name, and then the third field that you're going to extract is the port. But because the port has actually multiple ports, what you want to do is you want to provide a start so that you basically get all of the actual ports that are part of that port. So that's really about kind of, custom columns. And again, if you kind of search into your kind of notes here, you can sort of see custom columns, and you can sort of see, a printed table using comma separate list of custom columns. That's exactly what it does. Or you can put it to a file. Now, if I kind of go up here, so it doesn't look like the actual cheat sheet from Kubernetes. It does provide you any extra samples. So you may have to. Oh, here they are. That's okay. So I can sort of see here examples using custom columns. Get pods here with data and extract out the image. So this one says all images running in the namespace default grouped by pod as well. So there's going to be certain things that, just keep this kind of in mind for exam study. But even, I'm certainly, trying as much as possible to kind of use these in my own day-to-day job to make sure that, one, I can learn it, but also two, to make my day-to-day job far easier and extract the kind of information that I need. And there will be support from the Kubernetes community when you kind of run into maybe a kind of more complicated version. But definitely, make sure that you kind of you learn about the custom columns, the output verbosity levels and debugging that we kind of saw before. And then, obviously you kind of output to your JSON and how to extract the information from your JSON path. So hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Thank you.